Welcome, weary traveller. Tonight, we're taking a voyage to a harsher time. A world of sagas, seafaring, and smoky longhouses. We're diving into what life was really like during the Viking Age. Forget the horned helmets and heroic raids you've seen on TV. The truth is, you probably wouldn't last a single day as a Viking. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 873 AD. You blink awake in pre-dawn gloom inside a Viking longhouse. Your bed is a heap of straw thrown over a wooden bench, maybe with a rough wool blanket or a smelly animal skin on top. It's certainly not memory foam. In fact, the straw mattress is damp and half rotten, alive with insects. It smells like a barn floor because, well, it was part of a barn floor last season. There are no pillows and definitely no Egyptian cotton sheets. Just a scratchy wool blanket that hasn't been washed since last winter and now weighs as much as a small sheep from all the embedded dirt and sweat. Cozy, right? You try to stretch, immediately regretting it as the cold air hits you and every joint in your body protests. It's freezing this morning. You can see your breath as a faint white cloud. You're 22 years old, which in Viking terms is roughly middle-aged. Years of hard labor have left you achy and stiff. Your spine cracks like an old wooden hull, and your knees sound like a bag of rocks being shaken by a confused peasant. You rub your eyes, careful there's soot on your face from the fire, and sit up slowly. Getting out of bed is a gamble. The dirt floor may be wet from last night's rain seeping through the turf roof, or sticky from something the goats left behind. Either way, your bare feet are about to become one with the natural floor texture. Splish or squish, choose your adventure. As your eyes adjust to the dim light, you realize privacy is not a concept here. In the sprawling one-room longhouse, your entire family, parents, siblings, maybe a cousin or two, and even a couple of thralls, slaves, are bundled in their own straw piles nearby. On the other side of the hall, separated by a low wooden partition, you can hear the animals stirring. The family cow moos softly and a few goats are already shuffling around. Yes, your livestock lives indoors with you, helping warm the house in winter. Personal space, not happening. Everyone, humans, animals, and countless bugs, shares the same air. You are never truly alone here. Even the lice in your hair are loyal companions. Welcome to morning in a Viking village, where me time simply doesn't exist. And the smell. Oh, the smell hits you before you even fully sit up. It's a fragrant symphony of aromas you'll never find in a scented candle. Take a whiff of wood smoke, human sweat, wet wool, and a hint of ripe fish that's been hanging from the rafters to dry. Add in the tang of manure from the livestock corner and the ammonia reek of that chamber pot in the corner that was used overnight. The pot hasn't been emptied yet, so that pungent perfume is really layering nicely with everything else. You pray that odd sour note in the scent is just spilled ale and not the beginning of mold in the thatch above your bed. But deep down, you know it probably is mold. Mold is basically a roommate in these damp wooden homes. Febreze hasn't been invented, and even if it were, you'd probably just use it as extra fuel for the fire. Nature is calling loudly, and unfortunately, it's not leaving a voicemail. You need to relieve yourself, so you shuffle out of your straw bedding and search for your shoes in the dark. No plush slippers here. You grab a pair of stiff, cracked leather boots. They're basically medieval Crocs, easy to slip on, full of holes, and absolutely hideous. At least they protect your feet from the worst of the floor muck. Kind of. Holding your breath because of that chamber pot stench. you tiptoe past sleeping family members, past a snoring thrall curled by the door, and push open the wooden door of the longhouse to step outside into the dawn. Immediately, a blast of cold, damp air greets you, reminding you that yes, you live in Scandinavia, and most mornings feel like a slap in the face by an ice giant. There's no toilet waiting for you out here, no seat warmers, no porcelain throne, not even a basic outhouse unless your family dug one. If you're a peasant farmer, which you are, your bathroom is simply wherever away from the house you can squat. In this village, the unofficial spot is behind a clump of bushes near a pit that kind of functions as a latrine. In the early light, you stumble over some rocks and nearly trip. Careful, that's a goat skull someone tossed out weeks ago. Sanitation isn't exactly a science yet. You find the usual spot, a shallow hole in the ground that's been used so often it's basically a pile of human and animal waste. The smell here could slay a dragon. It's a miracle your nose hasn't crawled off your face in protest. You do what you have to do, as quickly as possible. Toilet paper? Never heard of it. Instead, you grab a handful of moss and last year's dried leaves to, finish the job. If it's winter and everything's frozen, you might even use a clean snowball as nature's coldest wet wipe. A bracing experience to start the day, to put it mildly. You make a mental note to thank the gods later that you didn't accidentally grab stinging nettle leaves. That mistake only happens once. Now comes the truly fun part, disposal. In a medieval city, people might fling their bucket out the window yelling, "Gardy-loo," meaning watch out below. But here in your little Viking farmstead, you just scoot a bit farther from the house and dump the stuff in the pit. There's a scrawny pig sniffing around that will probably take care of some of the waste later. Yes, pigs will eat anything. You cover the rest with a thin layer of dirt, a token effort at cleanliness, and swat away a cloud of flies already buzzing in. Congratulations, you've survived your morning bathroom adventure without face planting in the cesspit. You'd high-five yourself, but your hands are... Well, let's say you'll want to wash them first. If only there was running water and soap handy. You wander down to the stream nearby to rinse your hands. The icy water shocks your fingers, but it's better than nothing. There's no such thing as antibacterial soap. You scrub with sand and water the best you can. At least the stream is flowing and relatively clean upstream. Let's not think about what's happening downstream of your latrine pit. Drying off means wiping your wet hands on your tunic, because towels aren't a thing in your world. With that chilly chore done, you hurry back toward the longhouse, shivering in the morning mist. In the distance, a rooster crows, nature's alarm clock, since you don't have an iPhone to screech you awake. Not that you needed the rooster today. You were already up thanks to a full bladder and the general discomfort of Viking sleeping arrangements. Back inside, the longhouse is waking up. People are coughing, animals stirring, a baby starts crying somewhere in the mix. You rub your arms to get warmth and set about getting dressed, if you can call it that. Truth be told, you slept in most of your clothes to avoid freezing overnight. Last night you went to bed wearing a threadbare linen shirt and wool trousers. You might have even kept your wool tunic on. Undressing fully in winter could be suicidal when indoor temperatures drop close to freezing. This morning, you simply pull on your thick wool tunic over your undershirt, if you're lucky enough to own one. The tunic is basically a long sweater dress looking thing made of scratchy wool that your mother spun and wove by hand. It's the color of sheep, that is, undyed brownish grey with ancient stains of who knows what. It itches like crazy, but you're used to it. Fashion options are extremely limited. Will you wear the old wool tunic with patches, or the other old wool tunic with patches? Such style diversity. You fasten a belt around your waist to keep the tunic in place. From it hangs your trusty seax, a small, all-purpose knife in a leather sheath, because every Viking carries a knife at all times. It's your eating utensil, your tool, and your weapon in a pinch. Next, you shove your arms into a wool cloak or coat. This is your outdoor jacket, a heavy rectangular wool cloak fastened with a simple bronze brooch at the shoulder. It's thick, smells heavily of smoke from being dried by the fire, and has a few holes that have been clumsily mended. Still, it's the only thing standing between you and the icy wind outside, so you wrap it tight. Let's talk footwear. You've got a pair of ankle-high leather boots, basically leather wrapped and stitched into shoe form. They're absolutely not waterproof. After yesterday's trek through marshy fields, they're still damp. You check inside for unwanted critters. Last week you found a big spider taking up residence in there. To combat the cold, you stuff a bit of dry straw into each shoe as insulation, then put them on. Socks? The Vikings haven't really invented cozy knitted socks yet. At best you have some strips of wool cloth or fur to wrap around your feet. It's not exactly UGG boots, but it will have to do. For headwear, if it's bitter cold, you might pull on a wool cap, but otherwise you'll go without, showing your unkempt hair to the world. Speaking of hair, horned helmets are not a thing here, despite what every cheesy opera or costume shop would have you believe. If you're a warrior, you might own a simple iron helmet without horns for battle, but you definitely don't wear it while shoveling manure on the farm. So your head is bare, save for your tangled mane of hair. You run your fingers through it, trying to dislodge the worst of the knots. Maybe you even pick up your comb. Yes, Vikings have combs, and you probably have one carved from bone or antler. Personal grooming is actually something these barbarians take pride in. You quickly comb through your hair and beard to look presentable by 9th century standards. If you find a louse or two in the teeth of the comb, you just flick it into the fire. Lice are basically family members at this point. You can't entirely get rid of them, but you try to manage the infestation so you're not scratching yourself bloody all day. By now, your mother or wife, or the household's women anyway, are up and about, and they've started the fire again in the central hearth. A smoky fire using damp wood and peat is now sputtering to life in the middle of the hall, filling the place with even more smoke until it hopefully drafts out of the hole in the roof. Your eyes water a bit from the fresh smoke, but you don't complain. That fire is the only source of heat and will be used to cook breakfast too. Besides, you're so used to living in perpetual smoke that your lungs are probably half soot by now. On the bright side, the smoke helps keep some insects at bay and cures the meat and fish hanging in the rafters. On the not so bright side, there's no chimney, so the smoke just swirls around and gradually seeps out through the thatch roof and wall gaps. You'll smell like a smoked salmon by the end of the day, as usual. Stomach growling, you shuffle over to the hearth hoping for something to eat. Don't even dream of coffee. That luxury won't reach your part of the world for another 700 years. And tea? Nope, not here, not now. As for breakfast cereals or a nice bacon and eggs platter, forget it. In the Viking Age, breakfast is a sparse utilitarian affair. You squat by the fire, there are no chairs, maybe a simple stool if you're lucky, and receive a wooden bowl from your sister. Inside is a dollop of something grey-brown, warm, and utterly unappetizing. Congratulations, it's your daily portion of gruel. This lovely concoction is a porridge made from whatever grains you have on hand, likely barley or oats, boiled in water with a pinch of salt, if salt is available. If the family cow is lactating, maybe there's a splash of milk in it, or more often, sour whey, the leftover from making cheese. On a really good day, there might be a few dried berries or a drizzle of honey mixed in. Today is not a really good day. Your gruel is plain and slightly burned from the pot, with a texture that brings to mind wet sand. Bon appetit. At least it's warm and fills your belly, which is what matters. Around you, everyone eats quietly. scooping gruel with wooden spoons or just slurping from the bowl. The kids might whine, but there's no alternative. Pop-Tarts haven't been invented, and even if they were, the nearest toaster is centuries away. You chew on a mouthful of porridge. It's a bit chewy, some grains half-cooked, and you crunch on something. Oh, a weevil. Protein. Honestly, you're not even grossed out. A little extra bug in the breakfast is just more nutrition, and you can use all the calories you can get. Life in this era is a constant battle against hunger, especially in winter. To wash it down, you have a few sips of small ale from a clay cup. Yes, you're drinking beer for breakfast. No, this isn't a frat party. This is basic hydration. The ale is weak, low alcohol, and safer to drink than water from the stream, which might carry diseases. It tastes a bit sour and yeasty, but it's wet, and that's good enough. Water straight from the stream is actually fairly clean up here in the mountains, but why take chances? Plus, you like the taste of ale better than plain water. Who doesn't? If you're really in a poor household, you might just drink water or diluted milk. But let's assume you have ale because you need something to dull the pain of existence. There's certainly no orange juice or coffee to perk you up. Instead, the best caffeine substitute you have is the brisk morning air and maybe chewing on some mint leaves, if you grow them, for a bit of flavor. After you choke down the last of your bland breakfast, you scrape your bowl clean. Every bit counts. The concept of calories isn't known, but you won't waste food. Someone in the family will likely use a bit of water to rinse the pot and bowls, and that water might even become the base for soup later. Recycled dishwater soup. Nothing is wasted in this world because you never know when you'll get your next good meal. Breakfast done, you rise to your feet and mentally brace yourself for the long day ahead. You're already tired, but there's no snoozing in or lounging around checking your social media. Not that you have any. In Viking life, if the sun is up, you'd better be up and working. Every hour of daylight is precious, and survival is a full-time job. Now the real fun begins. Daily chores. You don't get to skip off on some raiding adventure every day. Most days, you're farming, fishing, or fixing things, doing the countless tasks needed to keep your family alive. Remember, you are basically your own farmer, builder, butcher, and handyman rolled into one. There's no DoorDash coming to save you. If you want to eat next week, you need to put in the work today. First up, you head outside to tend to the animals. The cow that slept in the byre, the animal section of the longhouse, needs milking. If you're a woman in this society, that's probably your job. If you're a man, maybe you let your wife or daughter handle it while you get to the manly tasks. But let's assume you pitch in wherever needed. You crouch beside the cow on a three-legged stool, press your forehead to her warm flank, enjoy that musky cow smell and the flies buzzing around her, and start milking into a wooden bucket. If Bessie the cow is in a good mood, this goes smoothly. If not, she might kick. And getting hoofed in the face is not a great way to start the morning. Today, she's cooperative, aside from the occasional tail swat to your face. You get about half a bucket of frothy milk. It's not a lot, but it's liquid nourishment. This will be part of tonight's meal, maybe turned into buttermilk or used in a stew. Fresh milk goes bad within hours in the summer, so it either gets consumed quick or left to sour, intentionally to make a yogurt-like substance for later. Next, you grab a pitchfork and muck out the animal pen. Yes, that means shoveling poop and old straw out of the longhouse, pitching it onto the compost heap outside. The smell is rank, but weirdly, you're used to it. A life spent nose deep in barn odors has a way of dulling your sense of smell. Still, it's hard not to gag when you uncover the especially ripe layers from deep in the pile. This mixture of manure and straw will eventually become fertilizer for your crops. If you don't enrich the soil, your yields will be even worse than usual. So yes, Part of your daily routine is literally shoveling manure. You dreamed of Viking glory and heroism. Too bad, the reality is more shovel, less sword. With the indoor chores done, it's time to head to the fields. The sun, pale and weak, is finally above the horizon, though in this northern latitude it hangs low even at midday. Your field is not large, just a plot of land near your house where you grow barley, oats, maybe some rye, and hardy vegetables like cabbages, onions or turnips. The soil is rocky and not very fertile. Scandinavia isn't known for vast, rich farmlands, so farming here is a constant struggle. You hitch up your ox to the plough. If you don't have an ox, congratulations, you are the ox. You'll be pulling the plough yourself or with a family member. The plough is a primitive wooden contraption that barely scratches the soil compared to modern ploughs. You spend hours guiding it, wrestling it over roots and stones, trying to break the ground while the ox occasionally decides it's done taking orders and stops to chew cud. By the time you've done one strip of field, your back is screaming and your hands are covered in blisters. Gloves exist, but you can't afford them, so bare hands it is. Every muscle in your body is reminded that gym workouts in the modern era have nothing on real manual labor. Here, every day is leg day, and back day, and arm day. Who needs CrossFit when you have Viking farm chores? Depending on the season, your tasks vary. If it's spring, you're plowing and planting seeds by hand, one aching handful at a time. If it's summer, you're weeding the crops and cutting hay for winter fodder, swinging a scythe from dawn till dusk, getting covered in sweat and insect bites. Your forearms will be on fire from all the scythe work, and you risk slicing your leg open if you slip. Better hope you don't, because there's no ER to stitch you up. If it's autumn, you're harvesting, hacking grain with a sickle, gathering it into sheaves, and threshing by beating it with a flail to get the grains out. That's back-breaking work that sends dust and chaff up your nose until you're sneezing and coughing like you've got the plague. And if it's winter, the hardest job is just not freezing to death. You'll be slaughtering the remaining livestock you can't feed, salting or smoking the meat to preserve it, collecting firewood from the woods. Ever tried felling a tree with a hand axe in snow? Fun times. And checking that your roof is sturdy against the snow load. Winter days are short and dark. You might spend long hours indoors repairing tools, weaving baskets or carving wood. Anything to keep your hands busy and mind off the hunger. Yes, winter is semi-starvation time, no matter how hard you worked in summer to stock up. Chances are you're doing all of this on a meager breakfast and maybe a bite of flatbread at midday. There's no lunch break whistle. You just chew on a hard piece of yesterday's barley bread when your stomach roars too loudly, then keep going. The bread, by the way, might be so tough and dense you could use it to club a fish. Sometimes you soften it by dunking in water or milk. It's not tasty, but it fills the void. If you're lucky, you might also have a bit of dried fish to nibble on, strips of salted herring or dried cod that are as hard as leather. Careful you don't crack a tooth on those. Actually, dental hygiene is not a strong suit right now. You might still have most of your teeth if you're young, but they're worn down from chewing gritty bread, stone ground flour leaves, sand in the dough, and you likely have at least one cavity that nags at you. Toothache? There's no dentist to fix that. You either live with the pain, try some herbal chew or a shot of strong mead to numb it, or eventually the tooth just rots out and possibly kills you if it leads to an abscess. But you can't worry about that now. There's work to do and miles to go before you sleep. By midday, you're drenched in sweat in spite of the chill in the air. You smell pretty ripe. A mix of perspiration, dirt, and farm odors. You might think Vikings were filthy, but actually by medieval standards you're somewhat clean because you've been sweating so much. All that sweat and manual labor kind of cleanses through sheer exhaustion. Okay, not really. You reek, and everyone around you does too. The difference is, nobody here minds. When everyone smells like a goat's armpit, no one really notices. It's like an unspoken agreement. Besides, out in the open fields, the stench dissipates, and you get occasional breezes of pine trees or sea air if you're near the coast. Those little whiffs of nature help cut the odor of humanity on you. As you labor in the fields, sweating and grunting, a thought crosses your mind for the 100th time. There has to be more to life than this. You've heard stories of those bold men who go a Viking, meaning they sail off to raid foreign lands and come back with chests of silver, spices, and glory. Just last year, your neighbour Bjorn returned from a raid in England with a fancy carved brooch and tales of battle. Sure, he's missing 2 fingers now, and he developed a nasty cough, some foreign disease perhaps. But he's rich by your villagers' standards. The romantic lure of raiding, quick wealth, and adventure calls out to you as you hoe the turnip patch for the 1,000,000th time. You think, maybe next spring I'll join the Jarl's crew and go raiding. How hard could it be compared to this endless farm toil? Spoiler, it can be much, much worse. Fast forward to that hypothetical spring. You've signed on to join a Viking raid. The local chieftain, Jarl, assembled a group of warriors and farmers turned warriors to sail west across the sea, looking for treasure and fame. This is the part of Viking life that gets all the movies and TV shows. The longships cutting through the waves, fierce battles, heroic feats, the part they don't emphasize. Nearly everything about raiding is miserable. Let's start with the voyage itself. You and about 30 other unwashed Viking dudes cram into a longship about 75 feet long and maybe 17 feet wide. It's basically an oversized canoe with a single mast for a sail and a lot of oars. Personal space? Ha! Each of you has maybe a 2-foot patch to sit on. You set off at dawn from the fjord, rowing in rhythm. The ship slices through cold coastal waters, and at first it's exhilarating. Wind in your hair, salt spray on your face, the promise of adventure ahead. Fast forward a couple of days. Now you're far out to sea, you can't see land. The waves are tossing the longship around like a toy, and half the crew is seasick. There's no lower deck to escape to. This boat is open to the elements. If it rains, you all get drenched. If the sun bakes down, you broil. Rare in the North Atlantic, but hey, climate, surprises happen. Seasickness is brutal. You're dizzy, nauseous, and have already vomited what little was in your stomach. The boat reeks of puke, wet wool, and bilge water, a bouquet delightful enough to make even the hardiest Viking gag. And guess what? No Dramamine, no ginger candy, nothing but sheer willpower to get through it. You try to take turns rowing to give everyone a break. When you're not rowing, you're bailing water out of the hull, because these boats leak a bit and waves splash in. Sleep? Forget about it. There's no cabin or bed. You try to curl up at the bottom of the boat among coils of rope, using your rolled-up cloak as a pillow. But the boat is constantly moving, and inevitably someone steps on you as they move about. Maybe you catch a few minutes of shut-eye here and there, but it's never real rest. You dream of your straw bed back home, fleas and all, and it actually sounds appealing compared to this. Meals on board are equally fantastic. You've packed provisions for the journey, barrels of water, quickly going stale. Hard bread that's basically like chewing a shield, dried fish that needs to be pounded with an axe handle to be tender enough to bite, and maybe some smoked meat. There's also some ale or watered down mead, but not too much. Drunk rowers are useless if a storm hits, so each day you choke down cold, chewy rations. Sometimes, if the sea is calm, you all take turns at a small firebox filled with sand and try to warm a stew or gruel. But on rough waters, no chance. You just eat things as is. By the end of week 1 at sea, your teeth hurt from gnawing hard biscuits. Your stomach is sour, partly from the constant stress, and maybe partly from that sketchy barrel of water which, surprise, had a dead mouse in it, but nobody noticed until half of you got diarrhea, and you're beyond exhausted. Finally, land ho. You spot the green coastline of Anglo-Saxon England, or Francia, or wherever you targeted. Relief and excitement surge through the crew. You aren't dead. You made it across the sea. But now you have to actually go raid something. The plan might be to attack a village or monastery near the shore. Someplace weakly defended, ideally. You all psych yourselves up, banging swords on shields, invoking Odin or Thor under your breath for strength. Sure, you've got some decent weaponry. A few of you have swords. Your Jarl gave you one. It's probably old and a bit rusty, but still sharp. Many have axes or spears, and everyone's got a knife. You strap on what passes for armor, maybe a leather tunic, or if you're one of the lucky ones, a mail shirt. Those are rare and expensive, though. You do have a round wooden shield, which you grip tightly, heart pounding. You're about to risk your life in mortal combat, all for the chance to steal some silver and slaves. Adrenaline is pumping. You try to ignore the fact that your legs feel like jelly. The longship reaches a river mouth, and you row inland quietly. You beach the ship and jump out into thigh-high water, wading ashore. Immediately your boots and pants are soaked. You'll stay in those wet clothes for hours. But no time to complain. The raid leader urges everyone forward. You and your crew charge towards the unsuspecting target. If it's a monastery, you might catch some monks by surprise as they're singing their morning prayers. They will be utterly terrified. You and your beardy buddies must look like demons from their worst nightmares. If it's a village, maybe some poor farmers are out milking cows and suddenly see a swarm of armed Norsemen rushing at them. What follows is chaos and violence. You rush into the settlement yelling war cries. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage. Still, not everything goes smoothly. Maybe one of the villagers was a retired soldier or just a brave soul. He grabs a spear or even a pitchfork and manages to stab one of your friends in the thigh. Your friend goes down screaming. This enrages the other Vikings, and they set upon that villager viciously. You try to keep your wits. Your hands are shaking, but you grip your axe and shove your shield forward. A wide-eyed Saxon monk is in front of you, holding up a cross and babbling in Latin. You hesitate. He's unarmed. But the guy next to you has no such pause. He clobbers the monk with a sword hilt to the head, knocking him out cold. You remind yourself these people are the enemy, even if they're barely resisting, and you press on. You kick open the door of a wooden church and barge into a small room filled with candles and treasure chests. Jackpot, this is the monastery's treasury. Another Viking is already smashing open chests and stuffing silver chalices and gold altar plates into a sack. You don't have time to be picky, so you grab a shiny silver candlestick and whatever else looks valuable. Outside, you hear screams and the clash of weapons. An alarm bell is tolling now. Any locals who can fight are scrambling, but against battle-hardened raiders, they don't stand much chance. A burly farmer takes a swing at you with an axe. You barely block it with your shield. The force numbs your arm. You counter by slashing with your own axe. It's all instinct and terror. Training is minimal beyond basic strength and ferocity. Somehow, you land a hit on the man's shoulder. He cries out and falls. You step back, breathing hard, heart hammering, trying to process that you may have just seriously wounded or killed someone. But you can't stop to think about it. It's them or you in these moments. After what feels like an eternity, but is probably just a few minutes, the raid is over. The villagers who surrendered are rounded up. Those who resisted lie wounded or dead. A few of your comrades are injured too. One guy took an arrow to the arm, another has a nasty gash on his head. There's no time for tender care. They just slap a wool bandage on and hope for the best until we get home. You pillage what you can. Coin purses, jewelry, church relics, good weapons, and yes, slaves. This part is particularly grim. Any young, able-looking people from the village might be chained together to be taken as thralls. You try not to think too hard about their fate. They're just another form of loot. In this era, slavery is commonplace, and you've grown up knowing that being captured could mean you become someone else's thrall. Today, fortune swung in your favor. You're the captor, not the captive. Loot in hand, you all rush back to the longship. You need to leave fast before the local lord's forces arrive, or a larger mob gathers. Everyone piles into the boat, which is now uncomfortably crowded with frightened prisoners and sacks of goods. The wounded moan and bleed on the deck. You push off and row like mad, hearts still pounding from the fight. Arrows might whistle past from shore as a few late-responding villagers take potshots, but once you're in the river and heading out to sea, you're mostly in the clear. Only then do you truly take a breath and grasp that you survived. A couple of your crew did not. You see 2 bloodied bodies left behind on the shore because there was no time to retrieve them. If they're lucky, those fallen will get a quick burial by the locals. If not, the crows will have at them. As for your own injuries, you might not even notice the minor cuts and bruises until much later, when the adrenaline wears off. The voyage home begins, laden with treasure and captive slaves. You'd think this would be a joyous sail, but it's somber. Everyone is exhausted, and now you have injured comrades to care for in a boat, with no doctor and no supplies except maybe some herbs and spare cloth. Infection is the real enemy now. A slash from a dirty blade can fester. One of the older warriors has a deep gut wound. By the second day of sailing home, it's clear he won't make it. He grows feverish and starts babbling. Eventually he dies right there in the boat, in broad daylight under a cold grey sky, surrounded by comrades who can do nothing for him. There's no time for ceremonies. The crew quietly slips his body overboard into the sea. It sinks out of sight, and you murmur a quick prayer that the Valkyries take his soul to Valhalla. It's a stark reminder. This is the real price of glory. When you finally return to your village weeks later, you stumble off the longship sunburnt, windburnt, and several pounds lighter. You're sporting a new scar across your forearm and an impressive collection of flea bites. The crowded ship was a paradise for fleas and lice. But you also come home with a small pouch of silver coins and a fancy silver bracelet you took off a monk's arm. Your family is overjoyed that you're alive. They half expected you'd never come back. That night, the village actually has a little celebration in the mead hall. The loot is shared. The Jarl and leaders taking the largest share, of course. You trade tales of the raid over cups of ale. For a moment you feel like a hero, boasting of how you bravely fought and all the treasure you seized. People admire the shiny trinkets. The local blacksmith will melt some down to make rings or sword fittings. The thralls you brought are divided up among the Jarl and his favorites. Human spoils of war, destined for a life of servitude in a foreign land. As the adrenaline fades and you settle back into routine, you realize something. Raiding was not a magical solution to escape hardship. Sure, you have a bit more wealth now. Maybe you can afford a better cow or a new iron axe, but you paid for it in blood, trauma, and months of recovery. And despite the booty, here you are again at dawn a few days later, back in the fields, hoeing the soil like always. The thrill of that adventure is now a distant memory whenever your healing wounds ache. If anything, the raid made you appreciate the quiet misery of farm life, as strange as that sounds. At least at home, no one is actively trying to skewer you with a spear most of the time. Whether you stay on the farm or risk the occasional raid, one thing is certain in the Viking Age. Life is short and brutal. You've been lucky to survive into your 20s. Many of your childhood friends didn't. Some died in their first year of life. Infant mortality is cruelly high. Others fell victim to sickness as kids. There was that one winter when a fever swept through the village. You were about 5, and you remember your little brother growing pale and cold. He didn't make it to spring. Such tragedies are common. People grieve and move on because they have to. If you reach adulthood, you still face an obstacle course of diseases and injuries every day. Right now, your body is a testament to hard living. You've got scars from past accidents, a burn on your arm from when you got too close to the cooking fire as a child, a jagged scar on your thigh from an axe mishap last year chopping wood. You're almost always nursing some ache or pain. Maybe it's your arthritic knees, or an old wound that never healed quite right. Today, it's a toothache acting up again. You run your tongue over the offending molar. There's a hole in it, cavity, and bits of yesterday's bread irritating it. With no dentists, your best move is to ask the local healer to mix up something. Perhaps a clove of garlic or henbane to stuff in the cavity to numb it. If it gets really bad, someone might try to yank the tooth out with a pair of crude pincers. Good luck with that. There's no anesthesia beyond a swig of strong mead and a couple of friends to hold you down while you scream. For most ailments, the village relies on folk remedies and the knowledge passed down through generations. You might have a designated healer, maybe an older woman who knows her herbs. Got a fever? She'll brew you a tea of willow bark. It actually contains a form of aspirin, though nobody knows that scientifically. Stomach issues, maybe some mint or charcoal. Wounds are cleaned, sort of, with water or urine. Yes, urine, because it's believed to help. And it's at least sterile when fresh. She might pack a bad wound with moss or honey if available. Honey actually helps against infection, though that's pure luck that they noticed it. If you break a bone, they'll splint it with wood and cloth and hope for the best. If it's a bad break, you might be lamed for life. In a world without wheelchairs or physical therapy, a crippling injury often means you can't contribute to work. A potential death sentence if your family can't support an extra non-working mouth. Serious illnesses are beyond anyone's help. An infected cut, pneumonia, dysentery, tuberculosis, these are silent killers that lurk everywhere. Sometimes there are epidemics, and folks don't even have a concept of contagion. They might just say an evil spirit or angry god is taking lives. One day you're feeling fine, the next you're burning with fever and covered in rash or coughing blood. With no understanding of germs, prevention is essentially non-existent. You might carry a little amulet of Thor's hammer and hope it protects you, or say a prayer to the gods. But realistically, if you fall gravely ill, you either recover on your own strength or you die. How about childbirth? Well, if you're a woman in this society, giving birth is one of the most dangerous things you'll ever do. There's no pain relief, except maybe biting down on a piece of leather. The midwives do what they can, but if the baby is positioned wrong or labor stalls, there's no emergency C-section. You're in the hands of fate. Many women die in childbirth from hemorrhage or infection, childbed fever. For the men, you may one day watch your wife or daughter go into the birthing room, which is basically just a corner of the house, and only the baby comes out alive, or sometimes neither survive. It's heart-wrenching, but so common that it's almost expected that not every birth has a happy outcome. Those who do survive and have healthy babies are considered blessed by the gods. Even without calamity, the wear and tear of daily life is tremendous. Your joints ache by your 30s, you lose teeth one by one, your eyesight might fail. And there are no eyeglasses. If you become too nearsighted, tough luck navigating those fjords or recognizing friend from foe at 20 paces. You likely have some hearing loss too. Maybe from all that ship rowing with the wind howling, or simply old age, if you're lucky enough to see old age. Few Vikings live to be truly old, like 50s or 60s, but those that do are revered for their longevity. Most people you know either die young in battle or middle-aged from disease. There's a saying in your culture that the gods call the brave to Valhalla early, which is a poetic way of saying a lot of folks don't make it past 40. Given the lack of formal medicine, the Vikings lean on spiritual beliefs to cope with illness and death. Maybe someone will carve runes for you, a little charm to ward off a disease, or make a sacrifice to the gods. Perhaps slaughter a goat at the shrine of Thor, asking for strength to heal. If it works, great. If not, well, they assume it was just your time to go to the afterlife. It's a world where the line between superstition and medicine is blurry. One day you might be applying a poultice of herbs to a wound, practical, and the next you're waving a burning sage stick around a sickbed to chase away evil spirits, spiritual. You cover all bases because you can't afford not to. The concept of cleanliness affecting health is starting to dawn on some minds. Vikings do bathe weekly, which likely spares them some infections that filthier folk get. You've heard the old tales of English people complaining that Vikings wash too much and comb their hair, making the local women swoon over these dandified pagans. You chuckle at that. Bathing once a week is hardly excessive. Still, in an age where others might bathe once a year, you Vikings oddly have a reputation for being clean freaks. So despite all the grime of daily labor, you do attempt a regular bath. Which brings us to, after a long day of working, and possibly pillaging, you are filthy. Sweat, dirt, fish guts, bits of straw, you name it, it's stuck to you. So, when the opportunity arises, you actually take a bath. Vikings traditionally set aside Saturday as bath day. The Old Norse word lugardaga literally means bathing day, which lives on in the word Saturday in Scandinavian languages. That doesn't mean a luxurious spa experience, mind you. Bathing might mean wading into a cold river and quickly scrubbing yourself, or heating some water over the fire and pouring it into a wooden tub if you have one. Imagine you've decided to wash up. You haul buckets of water from the stream, heat them as much as you can in iron or clay pots over the fire, then dump that warmish water into a large wooden barrel or trough. You strip off your grimy tunic. Everyone else politely averts their eyes if you're not alone. Modesty exists, sort of, but communal living means privacy is thin. Then you step into this barrel and crouch to splash water over yourself. Perhaps you have a bit of lye soap. Viking soap is made from animal fat and wood ash, which creates a crude lye. It's harsh on the skin, scrub too hard and you might take off a layer, but it does cut through grease. You scrub the worst of the dirt off, maybe use a rough cloth to slough off dead skin, exfoliation, Viking style. You rinse as well as you can. By now, the water is a murky grey-brown and rapidly cooling. You won't linger in it. This is about function, not luxury. If you're lucky and live near natural hot springs, say in Iceland, or your community has a sauna-like bathhouse, you might get a better experience. Some Viking settlements did have bathhouses where you'd sit in steam, then jump into cold water, but let's assume you're just doing the bucket bath. Once you're done, you step out, teeth chattering, because of course the water got cold and the air is chilly. There's no fluffy towel waiting. You grab an old linen cloth, or simply air dry for a minute, and then put your somewhat cleaner clothes back on. Instantly, you smell like wood smoke again because the fire is nearby. But at least the sweat and dirt of the week are reduced. You run your trusty comb through your hair and beard again, maybe even trim your beard with a sharp knife to keep it tidy. Shaving is possible, they have razors, but full shaves are uncommon. A trimmed beard is more likely. You clean out your ears with a little ear spoon. Yes, they exist. And maybe use a toothpick or chew stick on your teeth. For deodorant, perhaps you rub some scented herbs on yourself. Rosemary, pine needles, anything to add a pleasant smell. Now you feel almost human, possibly the cleanest you've been in days. Too bad by tomorrow you'll be dirty all over again. Hygiene is one area where Vikings are actually a bit ahead of their time, but don't overstate it. You're not walking around smelling like a rose garden. You basically oscillate between filthy and moderately clean states, never approaching modern standards of cleanliness. Lice are still a problem no matter how often you comb, and you likely have intestinal parasites from unclean food and water, a fact you only realize when, using the latrine. Still, you make the effort, and in this rough life, that's noteworthy. It even has a practical side. Clean wounds and bodies heal better, and a warrior with crusted sweat and dirt might get an infection more easily than one who cleaned up. The gods only help those who help themselves, as they say. By now you have a pretty good picture of your daily grind. Work, eat, survive, repeat. But what about the society you live in? Vikings didn't exactly have a centralized government or a police force, but they did have social rules, honor codes, and a fair bit of interpersonal violence to keep things interesting. First off, you live under the rule of a jarl or local chieftain. He's like a regional boss, maybe akin to a lord in feudal terms, but Viking society isn't quite feudal yet. You're a carl, a free common person, not a noble, but not a slave either. In exchange for protection and leadership, you owe loyalty to your jarl. This might mean paying taxes in the form of grain, livestock, or labor. It definitely means if he calls the thing, the local assembly, or raises a war band to defend against enemies, or to go raiding, you're expected to grab your axe and show up. You had better not ignore a call from your jarl. Being labeled disloyal or cowardly is a stain on your honor that could get you exiled or worse. Ah yes, honor. Viking society runs on it. Your reputation is basically the most valuable thing you own, since material stuff can be stolen or burnt easily. People have long memories for slights and favors. If someone insults you publicly, calls you a coward, or impugns your family, you're kind of obliged to answer for it. This might mean a physical fight on the spot, or a formal duel called a homegang later. Declining a challenge is as good as admitting you're what they say you are. And a bad reputation can ruin your life. No one will want to trade with you, marry you, or even live near you if you're thought to be dishonorable. So ironically, in a lawless seeming place, social pressure forces a lot of violent accountability. It's like high school with swords. Gossip and pride can be lethal. There is a system of law of sorts, the Thing, an assembly where free men gather to settle disputes and make decisions. If you have a grievance, say your neighbor's sheep repeatedly trample your crops, you bring it to the Thing. A bunch of old respected men, and maybe some mouthy others, will hear both sides. They might decide on a fine or compensation called vergild if it's for a person injured or killed. For example, if someone killed your brother, rather than you two clans murdering each other endlessly in a feud, the Thing could assign a price, a number of silver coins or livestock to be paid to your family as compensation. It's not exactly satisfying. You'd probably rather just avenge him with an axe to the culprit's head, but it helps prevent every small conflict from turning into a generations-long blood feud. Sometimes. Feuds still happen, though. Oh boy, do they happen. One wrong word, one drunken brawl at a feast, and suddenly two families are duty-bound to hatred. It can escalate to the point where folks ambush each other in the woods or burn each other's houses down at night. It's a vicious cycle. Each side feels honor-bound to strike back for the last injury. If it gets really bad, one side might be declared outlaw at the Thing, meaning no one is allowed to give them shelter or food, effectively a death sentence as they must wander alone and can be killed by anyone without legal penalty. Outlawry is about the closest thing to jail in this world, except instead of sitting in a cell, you're just banished and likely hunted. Let's not forget the thralls, the slaves. It's possible that you own a thrall or two if your family managed to buy one, or if you captured some on a raid. Thralls do a lot of the hardest labor. They haul water, split firewood, plow fields, tend animals, and serve their masters in any way required. They have no rights. You can beat your thrall, even kill them in some regions, and face little consequence, aside from maybe reimbursing the value to the king or thing if it was considered wasteful destruction of property. If you're a kind person, you treat them just slightly better. Maybe you don't beat them unless they really anger you, and you feed them half decently so they can work harder. But you're always aware they might run away or rebel if given a chance, so you keep a close eye. For thralls, every day is endless toil and abuse. Your life as a free Viking might be tough, but at least you're not a slave. That is a cold comfort you remind yourself of when you're feeling particularly down. It could be worse. You could have no freedom at all. What about women in Viking society? If you, the reader, are imagining yourself in this scenario as female, your day would be just as hard, though different in focus. Viking women, if free, have a bit more agency than, say, women in other medieval societies. You can divorce your husband under certain conditions, if he abuses you or can't provide, for example. You can inherit some property, usually the dowry you brought into a marriage. You often run the farm when the men are away. The keys to the household storage are literally in your charge. Women often wore the keys at their waist, symbol of being the householder. That said, you're still expected to be subservient in many ways. You do the cooking, child rearing, clothes making, and all domestic chores. You also do farm work like milking, gardening, preserving food, etc. And you have to endure the danger of childbirth, as we covered. In social affairs, your voice counts less. You can't officially attend the thing or become a law speaker or chieftain, with extremely rare legendary exceptions. And if your husband or father decides to move the family to Iceland or go raiding, you don't have a lot of say. You pack up and go where your family goes. There are tales of shield maidens, women warriors, but they are just that, tales, or at best exceptionally uncommon. If you're itching to swing a sword as a woman, you'd face not just the enemy, but also your own society's raised eyebrows, at minimum, or outright scorn. Still, Viking women are no delicate flowers. They could and did fight to defend their homes if necessary, and some might have joined raids disguised or with special permission. Generally, though, your battles are quieter but no less grueling, fighting off starvation, managing 10 kids, half of whom might die young, and keeping a household running in this unforgiving world. Now, regardless of gender, everyone is expected to follow the Norse religion and customs. By 873 AD, Christianity hasn't really tamed Scandinavia yet. It's creeping in over the next couple of centuries. So you worship the old gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, etc. There are no churches or priests in every village, though there are shamans or seers called vulvas who perform rituals. Religion for you is woven into daily life. You might offer a blunt thanks to Thor when a thunderstorm waters your crops, or a quick prayer to Njord if you're heading out to sea. You likely have a carved wooden idol of one of the gods in your home, or a local sacred grove where the community sacrifices animals at festival times. And you absolutely believe in supernatural forces. Elves, trolls, land spirits. Those are real in your mind. If your cow suddenly dies, maybe a vengeful spirit or witch was to blame. If you recover from a grave illness, perhaps Odin or your ancestors intervened. This belief system is both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because it gives meaning. Die in battle, and the Valkyries will carry you to Valhalla, so fear not the blade. Terrifying because the Norse gods are not exactly cuddly or consistently benevolent. You don't want to anger them. You live in a state of trying to appease higher powers, keeping the peace with the land spirits, perhaps by offering a bowl of porridge to the little gnome-like Nisa in the barn, lest he turn mischievous, or making a sacrifice at the autumn blot, sacred feast, so that your harvest is good and winter is kinder. Oh, and there's the looming idea of Ragnarok, the end of the world, always in the background of your cultural stories. You've heard around the hearth how someday the gods themselves will fall in a great battle. The sky will turn black, monsters will run free, and everything will burn and sink into the sea. But no biggie after that, a new world will rise. It's heavy stuff, but on some cold, dark nights, as the wind howls like a wolf outside, you can't help but wonder if the end times are coming. After all, life is so hard already. Maybe the world is about to break. It isn't, at least not in your lifetime, but you wouldn't know. In summary, your society is a mix of tight-knit community and brutal individualism. Your village will band together to survive against outsiders or the elements, but within, everyone is also watching their own backs and fiercely protecting their honor and property. It's a precarious balance, and one that can erupt with the slightest provocation. In a weird way, this keeps you on your toes. You're careful about how you speak to people, you remember favors and debts, and you make damn sure to show up when your community needs you, be it building a neighbor's barn that burned down or joining the defense against a rival clan. Because out here, isolated in the northern wilderness, if you don't stick together, everyone dies. After surviving another endless day, whether you were farming, raiding, trading, or something in between, evening finally comes. You trudge back to your longhouse, muscles aching, carrying whatever you gathered. A bundle of firewood, baskets of barley, a net of fish if it was a fishing day, etc. The sun is setting, painting the sky in streaks of cold pink and gold. The moment you step inside, you're greeted by that familiar cocktail of smoke and human smell. It's not quite home sweet home, but it's home. The fire in the hearth has been stoked, and a large iron pot hangs over it. Something is simmering within. With any luck, it's dinner. You peer in, hungry. Tonight's menu: stew. Of course it's stew. What else do you expect? A Michelin-starred tasting menu. The stew is a catch-all for whatever the household has on hand. In summer, it could be fresh vegetables and meat. But perhaps this is a leaner time. You see chunks of turnip and onion floating in a thin broth, maybe a few shreds of meat from that scrawny goat you slaughtered last week, and some barley grains to thicken it. It's not much, but the smell, though plain, makes your stomach rumble. You haven't eaten since that hard bread at midday. Family members and thralls gather around as wooden bowls are filled. You sit on a low stool or just on the ground by the fire, eager to dig in. There's no dinner table as such. Everyone just finds a spot. Forks haven't been invented yet, so you use a spoon for the broth, and fish out the solid bits with your knife or fingers. It's hot, which is wonderful. Taste-wise, let's just say Gordon Ramsay would not be impressed. It mostly tastes of salt. You use salt generously to preserve and flavor food, and a bit of gamey fat. If you're lucky, someone foraged some herbs and threw in a pinch of dill or thyme, maybe a bay leaf. But spices like pepper are exotic and absurdly expensive. You've probably never tasted pepper in your life. So bland stew it is. You chew slowly on a piece of boiled turnip that has the texture of a sponge and the flavor of warm water. Delicious. At least there's bread to go with it. One of the women baked flatbreads on a stone by the fire earlier. Simple cakes of barley or rye flour and water, maybe a bit of sourdough to leaven if they had some dough saved. They're dense and slightly burnt on one side, but you use them to sop up the stew. Occasionally you might have butter to spread, but that's a luxury usually saved for special occasions, and in winter the cows aren't producing much. You do have cheese, a small wheel of very hard, salty cheese made from goat's milk that's been aging for months. You cut a thin slice, it's strong stuff, and you have to make it last. And nibble it. It's actually pretty decent, one of the tastier elements of your diet. Dairy is hit or miss. Fresh milk spoils fast, but cheese and sour milk products keep longer. As for drink, there's more ale, of course. The ale continues to be your beverage of choice, and tonight maybe you indulge in a bit more now that the day's labor is done. If your harvest was good or your raid successful, you might even have mead, honey wine, to celebrate. Mead is sweeter and stronger, a real treat reserved for feasts. But honey is scarce. Beekeeping is not widespread and wild. Honey is hard to get, so don't count on more than a sip or two in a given month. More commonly, you just drink ale or water, sometimes a sour, fermented milk drink if you're weird and acquired the taste. The Viking version of a protein shake, perhaps. As everyone eats, the initial silence of hungry workers gives way to low chatter. The firelight flickers on soot-stained beams, and the air, though smoky, feels a tad more cheerful with the promise of a full belly. This is perhaps the most peaceful time of a Viking's day, gathered with your household around the warmth, eating and relaxing for a short while. You lean back against the wall, finally letting yourself unwind a bit. Outside, night has fallen. There's the faint howl of wind and maybe a distant wolf's cry off in the forest. But inside here it's relatively safe and snug, if you ignore the fleas biting your ankles. With dinner done, what now? There's no Netflix or books to entertain you. Instead, the evening's entertainment is conversation and storytelling. Maybe someone starts by complaining about the day. That cursed ox gave me trouble again. Or, the fish just weren't biting this morning. Small talk, Viking style. Eventually, as people settle in and children fall asleep, one of the elders clears his throat and begins a story. This could be a folktale or a retelling of one of the great Norse sagas or myths. You've heard them all 100 times, but they never get old. Partly because, let's face it, there's nothing else to do. So you happily listen again as he recounts how Thor, mighty thunder god, once dressed as a bride to trick the giant Thrym and recover his stolen hammer. The hall fills with quiet chuckles at the funny parts. Imagine burly Thor in a wedding gown. Even your rough-hewn Viking humor finds that amusing. Maybe after that, someone else picks up a musical instrument, a lyre or harp if available, or perhaps just starts singing a familiar tune. Vikings love a good song, especially one with a rousing chorus everyone can join in on. You all might sing a simple rowing song or a drinking song taught by your grandparents. Your voices echo in the rafters. Sure, half the people are off-key, but in the golden glow of the fire, with ale warming your belly, it sounds almost magical. There might also be talk of news from other villages. A trader passed through earlier, telling of a new king rising in the south, or rumors of strange ships seen beyond the fjord. Could be rival Vikings, could be nothing. Such news is shared and mulled over. The adults speak in low tones about what it could mean. Perhaps someone speculates about planning a trip to that thing meeting in spring to hear more. You realize how disconnected you are in this age. No newspapers, no internet. Just word of mouth that travels at the speed of a horse or ship. By the time you hear of a king's death or a battle fought, it might be months after the fact. But honestly, These grand events matter less to you than whether your neighbor will help you plow next week, or if your sister will marry that smith down the road. Local life is everything. The wider world is a hazy concept. As the night wears on, the fire burns lower. One by one, people yawn and stretch. You're utterly exhausted from the day's exertions, and the meal in your stomach is making your eyelids heavy. One of the thralls bank the fire, covering it so it stays smouldering through the night without burning the house down. Everyone lays out their sleeping spaces again. You throw your dank wool blanket back over your shoulders and curl up on your straw bedding. The children are already out like lights curled against their mother. You find a spot that isn't poking you too much and settle in. Around you, the symphony of the Viking night begins. Grandpa is snoring like a broken bellows. Someone else coughs occasionally. A baby murmurs in sleep, and outside the howl of that wind continues. You pull the blanket over your ears and try to find a comfortable position on the unforgiving wood and straw. It's cold, of course it is. The fire's warmth doesn't reach the far corners where you sleep, and the night chill creeps back in. You tuck your knees up to conserve heat. Your breath fogs with each exhale, and you silently curse how the Northlands can be freezing even after a sunny day. If it's deep winter, you might even keep your boots on while sleeping and a fur hat on your head. One of the advantages of communal living is body heat. With so many people and animals in one space, it's a few degrees warmer than outside. But warmer is relative. It's still like sleeping in a drafty shed. As you drift off, your mind wanders. Perhaps you think about the future. Will the harvest be good? Will you have enough to pay the Jarl's due? Perhaps you think about that raid you survived, the friends you lost, and you quietly thank whichever gods might be listening that you are here, alive and mostly whole, on this straw bed tonight. Or you might not be so deep. Maybe you're just wondering if tomorrow you can sneak an extra serving of porridge because you're still a bit hungry. Your last conscious sensation is an itch on your leg. Of course, a flea bite. You scratch it, half asleep. Those little pests will feast on you all night. One more discomfort in a life full of them. But somehow, you've gotten used to it. This is just normal. If anything truly bizarre happened, like sleeping on a soft mattress or wearing clean pajamas, that would probably shock you more than fleas and cold. Such is the power of habit and necessity. So, do you still think you could tough it out as a Viking? After experiencing this single day of cold, dirt, hard labor, questionable food, and constant danger, you're probably reconsidering your travel plans to the 9th century. The romantic image of marauding warriors and hearty feasts loses its shine when you realize the day-to-day reality was mostly grinding work, survival, and discomfort at levels most of us modern folk can barely imagine. The Vikings may have had moments of glory, discovering new lands, winning battles, composing epic sagas, but those were highlights in lives that were often nasty, brutish, and short. Yet, in spite of it all, these people lived full lives by their standards. They laughed, loved their families, celebrated when the opportunity arose, and found meaning in their beliefs and community. They took pride in their craftwork. Those intricate carvings on wooden ships and jewelry didn't carve themselves after all. Some Viking somewhere stayed up late, whittling by firelight to make that happen. They found joy where they could, in a successful hunt, in the first warm day of spring after a brutal winter, in hearing a particularly good saga told for the 100th time. Human resilience is a remarkable thing. Put us in the most challenging conditions, and we still find ways to sing, joke, and dream of a better tomorrow. The Vikings weren't superheroes. They got scared, tired, and sick just like anyone. But they endured a world without safety nets or soap or central heating, and somehow built a legacy that still captivates us today. Maybe it's because their hardships were so immense that their accomplishments, sailing across the Atlantic in open boats, for example, seem all the more astonishing. They remind us of both how far we've come and how much we take for granted. So tonight, when you slip into your clean, comfy bed with your soft pillow and adjust the thermostat to just the right temperature, maybe say a quiet thank you to the modern world and to your ancestors, Viking or otherwise, who slogged through adversity so you don't have to. You have the luxury of worrying about abstract things like online drama or what to binge watch, instead of whether you'll have enough hay to keep a cow alive through winter. You bathe daily, I hope. Wear clothes that aren't infested with lice. And when you're hungry, you open a fridge or a delivery app, not a barrel of suspiciously funky fish. Life is pretty good here in the 21st century. Sure, it has its stresses, but dysentery and Viking raids are generally not among them. It's okay to admit you probably wouldn't last a day in the Viking Age. Most of us wouldn't. We're soft, pampered creatures by comparison, and that's actually pretty great for us. We get to learn about that era from the comfort of a chair, rather than through personal experience. As you lay your head down, free from the fear of marauders or wolves, take a moment to appreciate the absurdly convenient world we live in. Perhaps, in some way, those Vikings we descended from, directly or indirectly, would be happy to know their descendants live in a time of peace and plenty, or they might just be completely baffled by our magic light boxes, smartphones, and running water and wonder when we fight or farm. Answer, we mostly don't, and they probably think we've gotten terribly lazy. Either way, you're living a life they couldn't fathom, but also one they worked towards unknowingly, every generation building a slightly better world for the next. Now let your mind drift away from the smoky longhouse and back to your modern bedroom. Take a deep breath of that clean air. Snuggle into your actual mattress, which, blessedly, is not stuffed with bug-infested straw. If a tiny itch on your leg makes you jump, relax. It's probably just the sheets, not a flea colony. You've traveled back from that harsh Viking day to the here and now, where the only axe you might handle is in a video game, and the only thing pillaging your home might be your pet cat looking for treats. Rest easy, time traveler. You survived a day in the Viking Age in your imagination, which is exactly how you should experience it, safely in a story, rather than in reality. You've earned your return to the land of modern comfort. Thank you for joining this journey into the past. If you're still awake, congrats, you outlasted the snores of our Viking grandpa in the corner. I hope you found this both amusing and eye-opening. Feel free to hit that like button if you did. And remember to subscribe for more boring history journeys that make you extra grateful for your boring, wonderful modern life. For now, close your eyes, let go of the day's worries, and drift off knowing that tomorrow morning no roosters or ravens will peck at your window. Your alarm clock and a hot shower await you instead. Sweet dreams and sleep well. In this millennium. Good night.